All right, it looks like our numbers of folks joining in has started to slow down. So we're going to begin and jump right into our webinar for today. We will be going over the virtual and hybrid school CDCN application process and overview. Our agenda for today is providing you with some context around the application process. And the next, it is a two-step process. And so we will be giving you all the guidance that you need in order to complete your application for those who are interested in obtaining a campus number for their virtual or hybrid schools, as well as having an overview of what needs to be submitted as you apply for that CDCN. So we'll cover the application process, give a brief overview of the Senate Bill 15 requirements. And we have Charles Hess here who will talk about the Ask TED process. And then we'll give folks an opportunity to ask any questions that they may have. And then we'll provide you with the next steps and the timeline around our application process. So we'll jump into some introductions. My name is Nicole Aguirre. I am the Director of Virtual Education and Innovation here at the Texas Education Agency. And within our team, there's a couple of different things that we oversee. One being the guidance around Senate Bill 15 as districts begin to launch their local remote learning programs. We have provided some support for districts. An additional support that we provide is the Virtual and Hybrid Program Accelerator, which is a program where districts who are interested in either launching, have launched, or plan to launch a virtual or hybrid school or program, we have technical assistance that's provided to those districts who want additional support in building out their program through an intentional and thoughtful design process. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in today's webinar, if that's something that your LEA may be interested in. And the other thing that we oversee that kind of complements all of the work that we do is the Texas Commission on Virtual Education, which is a group of folks that were appointed by elected officials whose job is to make policy recommendations for what virtual education will look like post Senate Bill 15, which is set to expire September 1st, 2023. And upon conclusion of our webinar, I will share resources and links to the commission. So that way, if you're interested in following along to these meetings that happen, they take place usually the last Wednesday of each month. They're broadcast live and you're able to follow along with the work that's happening within that commission. I will pass it over to my colleague, Anne, who can give a brief introduction, and then we'll pass it over to Charles.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anne Rajan. I'm a district support specialist. I work along with Nicole and all the things that she just mentioned. I'm happy to be here today and will help answer any questions as well.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Charles Hess. I am the agency administrator for the Texas Education Directory, and I am the one responsible for putting these new campus numbers in our system and taking them out when necessary. And I'm happy to be here and hopefully I can answer some questions as they come up.
Thanks, y'all. So as we get ready to jump into the application overview, I do want to make sure that I frame this around Senate Bill 15, which is the statute that allows for districts to operate a local remote learning program. One disclaimer that I want to make is that Senate Bill 15 has specific criteria that allows for LEAs to offer a local remote learning program. And in the instance that there is no statute in place by September 1st, 2023, all LEAs who have applied for a CDCN for a virtual or hybrid school will need to return that number back to the Texas Education Agency. And the reason this disclaimer is in place is simply because there is an expiration date to the law that allows for districts to operate a local remote learning program. A quick overview of the timeline for the application process, and we'll have a more detailed one that we'll share at the end, but our application window will open today and the application will be posted on our remote learning web page. And we'll share that link with you all here at the end of this presentation. The applications as they're submitted will be reviewed on a rolling basis, and the application window for applying for a CDCN for a virtual or hybrid school will close on May 20th, 2022. So this is the timeline of the application for the CDCN process. One of the things that we want to note here is, a question that comes up is, why would I want to offer a virtual or hybrid program? And we know that for the overwhelming majority of students, the best place to learn is in the classroom every day. However, some families and students have thrived when choosing to participate in specialized virtual or hybrid learning environments created by their school system. Those that are either 100% virtual or a hybrid program where it's partially in person and partially virtual with specific supports and curricular adjustments. So virtual models can improve flexibility and customization of school, making it more accessible for learners. It gives students more control over the place, path, and pace in which they learn. It allows crafting student schedules to offer more targeted learning options, such as small group sessions and tutoring on campus, and facilitating personalized, self-directed learning through which students build self-efficacy and time management skills. And we're leveraging educational technology tools to deliver instruction and engage students by practicing concepts through fun, feedback-rich, interactive programs. So this is an opportunity to provide a learning modality for families who prefer this learning method, for students who thrive in this learning setting. Want to level set around some key definitions for models for virtual learning. One is that folks can offer a virtual program, and this is what many of you are offering, where you do not have a CDCN, there's no specific campus number to your virtual programs. You're offering a local remote learning program to your students who are eligible, and it is 100% a virtual setting for remote learners. Another option, which is what the application for today is about, is to apply for a CDCN for a virtual school. Again, this setting is 100% virtual for students, and it is an isolated campus within your school district, meaning that they will receive their own performance rating. This campus has a dedicated administrator, etc. And then another model for virtual learning is a hybrid program, which does not require its own CDCN. However, if a district wants to operate a hybrid school, they have the option to apply for a CDCN for this model. And this model, when we describe hybrid learning, is a model in which students participate a portion of their learning in a virtual setting, and then another portion of their learning happens in person in a campus building. So want to name two of the key components for the application for today. So for those who are seeking approval to apply for a CDCN, the first part of the application process is to complete the application. And in completing this application, this will allow LEAs to provide evidence that they have met all of the specific components that were designed in launching a high quality virtual learning program. And so you'll see it is not a comprehensive, it doesn't cover every single aspect of your virtual learning program, but it covers some of the key components that we believe are necessary in designing a successful virtual or hybrid program. Another thing that I want to name here within this application process is as you apply for a CDCN, LEAs are required to have board approval. So within your application, there is also a component in which LEAs must submit evidence that they have received board approval to apply for a new CDCN for this school. Then once you have completed your application, submitted it, and it's been approved, the next step in the application process is to have your TED district administrator or superintendent complete the CDCN request form and submit it to either askted@tea.texas.gov, or if you are a charter school district, you would submit your request to charter@tea.texas.gov. So just want to name that it is a two-part process. Once you receive your approval, then we will grant you approval to go ahead and apply for your CDCN. Now, really quickly, before we jump into the content of the application, I do want to name some of the SB15 requirements. Again, we are able to allow districts to apply for a CDCN for a virtual or hybrid program because of the existing statute that is in place. And again, noting that this statute is in place until September 1st, 2023. So in order for an LEA to operate a Senate Bill 15 compliant hybrid or virtual school, they must have a C or higher performance rating. And within their program, there must be at least one star assessed grade level or a complete high school program, which includes every grade in which an EOC or star assessment is administered. Districts must continue to provide families an on-campus option, and they need to administer assessments to remote students in the same manner as their on-campus students, and ensure that there is progress monitoring available for these students to make sure that they are learning in the best setting that allows for student success. And then there's some additional teacher requirements in that no concurrent instruction is allowed, meaning that you cannot have your teachers teaching students in the classroom and virtual students in the same setting. And districts must also provide professional development on virtual instruction to teachers teaching in a virtual setting. Another key component of Senate Bill 15 is that school districts may only enroll up to 10% of their total district enrollment in their local remote learning program or virtual or hybrid school. So any student who is enrolled for even a portion of the year in a local remote program under Senate Bill 15 is counted towards that cap. And then any student receiving remote instruction not under the local remote learning program, but who received more than 50% of their instructional days via remote learning are also included in that 10% cap. This can include medically fragile students, students who were placed in a remote learning setting by an admission review and dismissal committee, and then receiving accommodations under Section 504, or students who are served via remote conferencing for more than 50% of their instructional days. Those are the LEA requirements for Senate Bill 15. There's some additional requirements for students. So for a student who participated in a remote learning setting in the previous school year, they need to have achieved satisfactory achievement or higher on their STAR assessment administered in the previous school year. They had to have a number of unexcused absences that is 10% or fewer out of all of instructional days and earned a grade of a C or higher in their foundational courses. And then for students who are participating in a virtual learning program for the current school year, student needs to be enrolled in a school district or open enrollment charter school. The student has reasonable access to in-person services at an LEA or school facility, and the student has fewer than 10 unexcused absences over a 6-month period. So those are your student eligibility requirements for participating in a district's local remote learning program under Senate Bill 15. So these are the requirements set within the bill, and districts are required to ensure that any student participating in a virtual setting is eligible to participate in order to draw down AD funding for that student. So those are the Senate Bill 15 requirements that must be met in order to operate a virtual or hybrid school under Senate Bill 15 for those who are applying for our CDCN. I'm now going to pass it over to Anne, and she's going to walk us through the application components that districts will need to complete as they get ready to submit their application.
Thank you, Nicole. We had a couple of folks ask us how they can get a hold of the slide deck. We will be posting this along with the recording on the remote learning webpage shortly after it's ready. So let me get into the application components. The application is broken down into 10 components, and you can see it on the screen right now. We ask for the school schedule, to the education program, what does academics look like, how does progress monitoring assessments look like, your recruitment plan, staffing plan, board approval, and then lastly, we ask for assurances that we are both on the same page when it comes to what is required and what the LEA is committing to. All of these components have either an SB15 requirement built into it in the approval criteria, or there are some TEA guidelines around remote learning that we elevate within the application to make sure that LEA is aware of it. And as we ask for your responses or attachments, you will see that they directly align to these components. So we're going to take a couple slides to just go into what this might look like. So here's the school schedule example. We will be asking for a master schedule. And within that master schedule, we would have this approval criteria outlined for you. So when we're looking at the attachment, we would want to see that there's evidence that no concurrent instruction is happening. Do you meet the requirement of at least offering 1 star as grade level, or if you're a high school program that you're requiring the courses outlined as part of SB15. And within the master schedule, it notes like, how are students taking this class? Are they on campus and getting synchronous learning, or is it an asynchronous class time? And so we will have criteria outlined as such, and we ask that the artifact or attachment and the explanation allows us to kind of check these off as we're reviewing the application. A huge part of the application is the academic plan. And in that, we have criteria outlined for how does instruction shift, or how is it designed for a virtual or hybrid learning environment. And we have given some examples on the detail at which we would want these, so that we can say, okay, these components are being met. For example, for high quality instructional materials, this could mean that you're taking a curriculum that is TECA-aligned, that's rigorous, that you use as district-wide, but you're going to digitize these lessons on your LMS so that students can engage in those high rigorous problems. Or you might be leveraging a TECA-aligned virtual lab for your science class, and you will name the software that you're using so that students who are doing this asynchronously will be engaging these materials. Progress monitoring, Nicole already mentioned that progress monitoring is one of those requirements. So we asked for examples of how you would be doing that. And a lot of folks do things like summative checkpoint assessments every month, or you will give feedback, and that feedback is then organized within the grade level or within the school as standards or learning objectives, so that you are ensuring that students who are learning virtually are also and monitoring how they're doing, just like you would in a brick and mortar space. When it comes to a modality specific approach to instruction, what we mean here is, how is asynchronous or synchronous but remote instruction being shifted so that students can be engaged in it? And how is the LEA intentionally planning for this? For example, if students are engaging in asynchronous work, how is the teacher viewing this? So you might be using software like Seesaw or GoFormative, and all that data gets built in. There's a streamlined process of like the arc in which students learn and how they receive feedback. And that is intentionally, we can see that is intentionally designed from the examples you're providing us, that says this is providing a cohesive learning experience for students, which is the next point. So as much as possible, we would like to, for you to name, if you're using an LMS, what that LMS is, how students and teachers use the LMS for not only instruction, but also for assignments. And then also how is feedback getting built in there? And then, and how much of this process is streamlined for both the teacher, the student, and maybe even the administrator in terms of knowing how learning is happening. A specific example I have there is that, say you're using Google Classroom and your teachers post an Edpuzzle assignment, which students view the video and answer questions before they come into their live session. That Edpuzzle assignment is already posted on Google Classroom, and whatever grade the student gets is directly posted in the LMS as well. The teacher can view that data ahead of time and create their small groups. So you can see that we're asking for something where we can see that cohesive learning experience from the software that you're using to the assignments to the curriculum as well. We have tried to think about how to make this process easy for you to leverage some of the tools that you've already kind of made. So in certain sections, you will see that it says you may type your responses or include attachments and then documents and then add explanations to say how these documents are meeting the criteria. When you see portions of the application that says attachment 1, submit a schedule or something like that, this means that we're asking for that document is required. So either you can attach as a link or like a PDF or a Word document when you submit the application. Again, we invite you to include explanations so that we understand what the purpose of additional documents were. And we really encourage every document or attachment to be assessed against the approval criteria that is already outlined in the application. That way we can make sure we have a full picture and we can score you accordingly. Every application we receive will be scored against a rubric, which will be posted on the remote learning webpage along with the application. You can see here, it's a smaller box, but basically we have the approval criteria outlined and we will have points associated with it, which is, so for an LEA, you can look at your own application and say, hey, do I meet these requirements? And then adjust accordingly before submitting. We have a minimum threshold of a score that we would like LEAs to reach for to be considered for a CDCN. And if you don't score high enough, then we will ask LEAs to join us in an interview so we can get more context around what you are building. And that is how the process is going to work out. Again, all this, yeah.
Go ahead.
I just want to say all this will be posted on the remote learning page.
And in the chat, I just dropped a link to the remote learning webpage for those of you who want to go ahead and access that and bookmark it. I will now pass it over to Charles Hess, and he's going to walk us through the Ask TED process and what districts need to take into account as they get ready to submit a CDCN form.
Okay. This is a great slide. It really has most of the information you would want or need. The bulleted items here are the criteria that we need to have in order to issue a campus number. And these, I'm not going to read them to you. They're right there. They're pretty easy to understand. What we're trying to do is we want to make sure campus numbers are being used for campuses and not programs. So the Texas Education Directory is not intended to track programs, and we want to avoid adding campus numbers for programs into our system. The characteristics you see here are nearly identical to the ones that we list in our help files in Ask TED. So if you've been in our help files, you might recognize these. And the way we've set this up is the remote learning application process will happen first, and then I will add campus numbers as necessary. So I'm at the end of this process. So once you receive approval, send me the new campus number request form. There's a link there at the bottom of the slide. And then please note in the email that the request is for an approved virtual campus. And here I'll reiterate that if you are a traditional school district, the request should come from the district TED administrator or the superintendent. You can email me at that askted@tea.texas.gov. If you are a charter, then you should email the Charters Division. They handle the Ask TED requests and activities on behalf of the charters. And that address is charteraskted@tea.texas.gov. The rest of my process is the same as with regular new campus number requests. Campuses enter the system as under construction, and they are activated upon request, not before August 1st. People who've been doing this a while might wonder why that date is in place when in previous years we've activated campuses prior to that. We've identified some problems with TSDS PEIMS that necessitate us pushing that to August 1st. So if you are expecting to have your campus activated sometime in July or June, I'm sorry, we'll have to wait a little bit. The date that they will be active is August 1st, not before. It's really about that simple. I wanted to comment on a question that was noted here. The question was, if we are approved and issued a new CDCN, but then the district decides not to move forward with implementing the virtual school, can we close the number before the start of school? The answer is yes. I think Nicole already replied to this. I will say that we should receive those requests at ASTED before or by September 1st, again, so we don't interfere with PEIMS. And of course, I would recommend that if you're going to move forward, I would hope that you have a solid plan in place to implement. But if you don't, then it's okay. We can take the number out of our system. So that's how that's going to work. I just wanted to emphasize those dates for you. And I would also note that there is a link to our the resources at our ASTED Help website, or ASTED Help web pages right there at the bottom of the slide as well.
Thanks so much. My PowerPoint has frozen. So let me see if I can get this going again. And Anne, if you have the PowerPoint pulled up, if you could, let's see, my PowerPoint is restarting at this moment.
Yeah, the next piece on here is asking, opening it up for questions. So it's
perfect. I can jump in. So what I'll do here is, because right now we do not have any live questions, but what I can do is for folks who have been following along, I can answer these questions. One question I see that just came in is, do you have sample language for a board resolution? I do not have any sample language, but what I can do is I do know of a few districts who have already received board approval for setting up an isolated virtual school. Let me see if I can do some outreach, Shannon, and I will. I can follow up with you to see if I can get you some examples. Okay, and then some other questions that we've answered are around, one, the resources for today's webinar. All of those will be posted on the remote learning webpage and will be accessible after this webinar. And I will email the presentation and the link to the recording to everyone who is participating today. The other thing, another question that had come up around Senate Bill 15, the same requirements that are in place this year will remain in place for the upcoming school year. Again, that statute is in place for this school year and for the next school year. And one really good question that came in is, what's the difference between a virtual program versus a virtual school? And why would you want to set up a school rather than just continue to run a program? So currently, right now, districts are running programs, meaning their students are assigned to a campus that is already existing within the district, and they are having to do some data mining to determine which student is in a virtual setting, and you're pulling teachers from various campuses to run these virtual programs. And so one of the main reasons that we're hearing as to why folks would like to set up a virtual school is the ability to consolidate all of their virtual learners and teachers into one place. It allows for cleaner data. It allows for all of your teachers who are teaching in a virtual setting to be in one school space. It allows for a dedicated campus leader. So if that's something that your district is interested in, that might be a reason why you would want to move to a virtual school setting. However, it's not required. You are not required to set up a virtual school, and LEAs may continue to operate as a virtual program in the same manner that they're operating in this school year and in the previous school years. Another question that came in was, for the teacher requirement, can teachers teach concurrently in a hybrid setting? If you've got students who are participating face-to-face and some participate and virtually, and under Senate Bill 15, concurrent teaching is not allowed in any virtual setting, whether it be fully virtual or hybrid. Teachers may not teach concurrently in any of those settings. And then Charles just spoke to the CDCN and districts not wanting to, if they choose not to go that route. So those are all the questions that have come in. I think I have a few more that popped up. So the slide that said the new CDCN can be a hybrid school, how would that work seeing as the campus is virtual? Would student attend in person at a regular building? That is correct. So if you decided to operate a hybrid school, there would need to be a dedicated campus for those students to be able to go to for their in-person learning days. Their virtual days would happen at home. Oh, I see Anne was already getting ready to answer that question live. Can we request an elementary virtual CDCN number? Yes, so there are three ways that you can request a CDCN. You may request a CDCN for an elementary campus. You may request a CDCN for a K through 8 campus, or no, K through 12 campus, or you may request a CDCN for a high school campus. Those are the three ways that you can request a CDCN: elementary, K through 12, or 9 through 12. Another question, who do we contact after this webinar is over if we have additional questions? You will contact our team, and it is, we'll share this email at the end, but it's remote.learning@tea.texas.gov. Another question about the board language. Once we have some examples, we can include the board language in the email that goes out to all participants. How many CDCNs can an LEA apply for? One. You may apply for one CDCN for your district for your virtual campus. And again, it's those three groupings: elementary, K through 5, or K through 12, or high school. Few more questions have come in, and I want to try to make sure that we can get to all of these. Will these campuses be rated and evaluated the same way as non-virtual buildings for accountability purposes? That is a great question, and the answer is yes. So all of this will be treated as a regular school within your district. It's just a different learning modality, and this school will be subject to a performance rating for accountability purposes. If a new student comes in new to a district, to see if they meet eligibility, they have to request the student records from the prior year to evaluate the preceding school year eligibility criteria. This is correct. If you have a student who came in from another school district and they participated in a remote learning program, or you'll need to get their attendance records, you will have to gather that information from the previous school district to determine whether or not a student is eligible. One thing that I will add here is on the remote learning webpage, there was an eligibility listing that came out where districts can utilize as a resource to, one, determine if a student is eligible to participate in a remote learning program. In the instance that there's gaps in the spreadsheet that is available for districts, you have to do a little bit of digging, and we've created a step set that districts can follow to help them determine whether or not a student is eligible. And one of those pieces is, you will have to go back and find some of the missing data pieces if it wasn't collected through our PEAM submission in the previous school year. And Anne has dropped that resource in the chat. Can we operate both the virtual program and virtual school at the same time? Yes. If you have a campus that wants to operate a virtual program, those students can remain dedicated to that campus. And then that program could be run on the campus as well as operating a virtual school at the same time. That is an option. for districts. I do know some feedback we had gotten on earlier on in the year was that there are some families who want their kids to go to their neighborhood elementary. And so for districts who want that option for their community, they can have that. Down here. Will TEA be able to provide that student listing for the next school year as well as an aid to the LEA? Can it be provided sooner? I will have to, most of these timelines around the student eligibility listing are around our PEAMS data submission. So for the next school year, it is our hope that we can get it to you as soon as possible, so that way districts can leverage that as a resource. But really what it boils down to is, allowing our data team the time to clean up all of the reports that are submitted to the district or to the state, so that we can ensure that we're providing you with accurate data. So it will be provided sooner than it was this year, but I do not have that definitive date to provide to you today. Another question that's come in is, to clarify, under the hybrid model, would the students have to go to a different brick and mortar location separate from the original school? So I would say that this question is up to the district. One example that we have seen is that the district created a dedicated hybrid campus, meaning that it was designed for a hybrid program. Students are in that building a portion of the week and they're home the other portion of the week. However, if your district does not have the space for a dedicated hybrid campus, what you would need to do is utilize one of your existing campuses to operate that in-person learning opportunity for your hybrid students. And as far as it being separate from the original school, not 100% sure what you mean here, but as if you're thinking in terms of like if it's their home campus, you don't have to create a dedicated space for a dedicated hybrid school, but that's just one way you could provide a setting for these students who are learning in a hybrid model. If you don't have the space, you could use one of your existing spaces and create a dedicated space for your hybrid learners to come in and learn in that setting. Following up on the CDCN campus levels, are middle schools 5 through 8 not eligible? If looking for a virtual 5 through 8 campus, could we apply for a K-12 CDCN? That's correct. You can apply for the K-12 CDCN, but you would offer your program for grades 5 through 8. And then what are the requirements for teacher certification? There are no additional requirements for teachers who are teaching in a virtual setting at this time. You would just need to meet the exact same teacher certification requirements that you would meet for every other school year, or for the content that they're teaching, the grade levels that they're teaching. You must have Texas certified teachers who are eligible to teach whatever grade level or setting that they're teaching in. Must the CDCN requirement for ASTED have a dedicated campus budget? Charles, do you want to take that question? Or do you want me?
Yeah, I would say it would make sense, I think, but that's not one of the requirements listed.
Right. It's not one of the requirements listed, but I'll just add that it would make sense to have a dedicated campus budget because, again, this is treated as its own school within your school district. And so you would have a dedicated principal, you would have a dedicated staff. So these campuses would need supplies, materials, resources. And so it would make sense to have your dedicated campus budget for your virtual schools.
That's really why a lot of people want a campus number to begin with. It allows them to break it out easier.
To support that program directly. For the hybrid, when they're in person, would the option be to attend the classes from a regular campus, or they can physically go to existing buildings but continue to be enrolled in different course or sections? So yes, so for the hybrid setting, you can choose where they go to take that course within the school district. It does not have to be like a dedicated space. Would the option be to attend the classes from their regular campus, or they can physically go to existing buildings but continue? Yeah, they can go to existing buildings but be enrolled in a different course or section. They can go wherever they need to go to receive the content for whatever course it is that they're taking. I think that allows for the that might be one of the flexibilities for the hybrid setting is, getting students to spaces where the courses are offered for students in that setting. And then another question is, if a student comes in new to a district, to see if they meet eligibility, they have to request the student. Oh, I think we answered this one already. Yep, I just forgot to hit done. And then this question is, can a private elementary school be in Illinois and the virtual part of it be in Texas? I would need to do a little bit more digging here, but the biggest piece is that whoever your partner is, the content and curriculum needs to be aligned to the Texas TEKS. And so whatever partner districts are considering needs to make sure that whatever it is that they're using, we are aligned to the TEKS because that's the curriculum that is set for all students. But right now, there are no rules in how districts partner with folks to offer their virtual programs, but you just want to make sure that the partner that you are selecting is going to meet the needs that our students here in Texas have specifically. And I don't know if there's anything you want to add there, Anne, about the partnership piece.
Yeah, I think in the application, if you are using a third-party provider, then within the application, you name that, and then you also show evidence of how that approval criteria is met by that third-party vendor. So if you're using something that's a software that allows for like asynchronous classes to be taken, we still need to see how those pieces are being met with the academic plan criteria, high-quality instructional materials pieces as well.
Thanks, Anne. And then another question that has come in is, if an LEA has a virtual school and a hybrid school, can we apply for both to have their own CDCN? And the answer is yes. And then the last question that's come in is, the expectation is that to qualify for ADA in a virtual building, they still need to be entitled to enroll. For example, be a resident of the district. Someone from out of state shouldn't enroll and generate ADA. That's correct. We are not enrolling students out of state into our local remote learning programs. These programs are designed to serve districts or students within your school district. All right, and I've got my PowerPoint back up and running, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, so those were all great questions. Thank you for dropping those into the chat. And again, if you have any additional questions, feel free to contact us directly, and we are more than happy to help get those questions answered for you. So now I want to spend a little bit of time before we jump into our closing. Wanted to give you guys some additional resources. So one thing that's come in designing your remote learning programs is districts have had questions about curriculum. And so we just wanted to name here that we've got a high quality instructional material through our Texas Home Learning program. And we've launched our 3.0, which is we're providing free access to HQIM material that operates effectively in person and in virtual environments. And the materials cover the following listed here on this slide. So that's one additional resource if you're looking for a curriculum resource for your virtual or hybrid programs. Another thing that I want to name, and we talked about this a little bit earlier in the webinar, but one of the programs that Anne and I oversee and support is the Virtual and Hybrid Program Accelerator. And I've umbrellaed this under Education Elements because they are the technical assistance provider that we are using to guide the work of this program. We do have some additional spots. So if you in your district are deciding that you do want to go this route and launch a virtual or hybrid program, we can give you the, I think we have the information on our remote learning webpage, but if this is something that you're interested in, we have an additional application process, and we just have a few seats left available for districts who want some support. But Education Elements, what they're doing is they're walking districts through an intentional design process and thinking of all of the components you need to take into account in designing a high quality virtual or hybrid program. And the program is structured in a way where there are dedicated biweekly coaching sessions. So you'll have a dedicated consultant who's working with your district to design your program, as well as cohort workshop learning opportunities. And so as you go through the different phases of all the things that you need to build out for your program, you've got some professional learning that takes place for you and your leadership team around your virtual program, for you to really dig into like, well, what does this mean? How does this impact my school community? You're able to connect with other districts who are going through the same journey. It's offered in two cohorts. So we've got some districts who have already launched a program, and they're looking at what can I do to revamp my virtual or online or hybrid program. And then we have another group of folks who have not yet launched, but they want to design their program ahead of the start of the school year. So if this is something that your district is interested in, again, this information is already linked and posted on our remote learning webpage. And Anne is, she's the person who will make outreach to you as if this is a journey that you want to go. So for any districts that are looking for additional support, this program is technical assistance to walk you through everything that you need to do in an accelerated fashion to get your virtual or hybrid program up and running for the upcoming school year. So wanted to make a plug there for a support for districts. And then for those who are not interested in joining the VHPA, but are interested, want additional support or guidance around designing their program, in the coming weeks, again, posted on the remote learning webpage, we will be adding a link to a design guidebook. And so Education Elements is in the process of building out a resource that LEAs statewide can use to build out their virtual or hybrid program. So want to note that as you build your application out, we have a pretty, we have a long application window, but there is a support that is coming for districts who want some narratives and some examples around what does this look like for my school community. I know there was one question around the board resolution language. We might be able to get some feedback over to them to include that in that guidebook. But there will be examples and things to take into account as you build out your program. So I do want to let folks know that there's an additional resource coming there. In terms of next steps, applications for applying for a CDCN, they are due May 20th. And then if we have any additional questions or if an additional clarification or evidence is needed, we may request that your LEA participate in an interview just to help us gather additional information that may have been missed upon the submission of your application. And then decisions for everyone will be made by May 31st. Again, once you submit your application, we will be reviewing those on a rolling basis. So the sooner you submit, the sooner you'll have that application. Once you have received approval from our team, and we'll be in communication with Charles and his team, once you have received approval from our team that you have been, your application has been approved, you are now eligible to apply for a CDCN. We will let you know that in your approval, and then you can apply for a CDCN. One date that you'll note is pretty far off is September 1st, and that's because that is the existing timeline for applying for a CDCN. However, we are encouraging everyone who is applying for a CDCN to complete that application upon receiving your approval for your application. So that way we can get that ready to go, and it's good to go by August 1st before the start of the school year. So that is the application window and timeline for getting your CDCN set up and ready to go for the upcoming school year. Again, we had the opportunity to spend a big portion of today answering questions from all of our participants, but as you begin to complete your application, and if additional questions arise, please feel free to contact myself and Anne at remote.learning@tea.texas.gov, and we can dialogue there, set up, if we need to set up a Zoom call to visit with you all as you design your programs, we are more than happy to support you all through this work. The application will be made available today on the remote learning webpage. So you'll visit this webpage and our IT team is in the process of getting this application uploaded. If it's not there just yet, it will be there very, very soon. So just keep checking back for when the application is made live on the webpage. So wanted to note this resource here. And then before we close out, again, if your district is interested in participating in the virtual and hybrid program accelerator and receiving that technical assistance support, you may email this email address, or on the remote learning webpage, there are resources and a webinar that links out to the overview of the program. It has the application, and we're more than happy to walk you through what that program looks like and talk through some districts who are leveraging that support. So again, thank you all for joining us today. Oh, I'm just going to drop this in here because it's not a question, but it is a compliment. Tiffany Carey, thanks for dropping this in here. She left a comment to say that the VHPA is amazing and we have received wonderful coaching. So that is some feedback directly from Frisco ISD. So if you would like to learn more about that program, again, I encourage you to reach out to us because we are more than happy to support you through this work. So thank you all so much for joining us for our webinar today. We appreciate you taking some time out of your day to come learn more about our application process. And we look forward to hearing from you and working with you in the future. You all have a wonderful day.